single mom was rejected for bringing her child to the interview until the millionaire CEO walked in. The glass doors of Westwood Enterprises slid open, and Autumn clutched Ellie's small hand tighter. Her heart pounded in her chest, not just from nerves, but from the weight of everything riding on this moment. Rent was overdue. Bills stacked high at home. She needed this job, needed it desperately. Ellie, only 7, walked beside her in her faded pink dress, her tiny sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. She carried her little sketchbook pressed to her chest like a shield, her wide eyes taking in the towering lobby. The receptionist, Brenda, looked up from her desk with a cold smirk. "You can't bring a child in here. This is a professional building," she said, her voice sharp, slicing through the air. Autumn's cheeks burned. She bent down to Ellie's level, whispering, "Just a little longer, sweetheart. Sit quietly. Mommy will be right back." Ellie nodded bravely, hugging her sketchbook tighter. But Brenda's sneer only deepened. She clicked her pen against the desk and said loudly, "This is highly inappropriate. If you can't even manage your personal life, how can you possibly manage a job here?" Her words carried across the lobby, drawing curious glances from others passing by. Autumn swallowed hard, shame and anger twisting inside. She opened her mouth to explain, but before she could, a voice cut in. Deep, steady, commanding. "That's enough, Brenda." Heads turned. Standing just a few feet away was Logan Westwood himself, the CEO. Tall, sharp in his tailored suit, his presence filled the room effortlessly. His eyes weren't cold, but they weren't soft either. They were assessing. His eyes shifted from Brenda to Autumn, then to Ellie, who sat small and quiet in the corner chair, pretending not to hear. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Logan's voice came again, calm but firm. "Miss Hayes, your daughter can stay. What matters is not appearances, but ability. Let's begin the interview." Autumn blinked, stunned. A swirl of relief, gratitude, and disbelief rushed through her. In that single moment, the trajectory of her life shifted because someone powerful had chosen to look past judgment and see her worth. Ellie peeked up from her sketchbook, her eyes meeting Logan's, and for the first time that day, Autumn dared to believe. Maybe this wasn't the end, but the beginning. The interview began with Autumn sitting across from Logan in a sleek glass-walled office. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting sharp reflections on the polished table. Her palms were damp, her voice trembling at first, but she forced herself to focus. This wasn't just about her. This was about Ellie, waiting patiently just outside with her sketchbook and crayons. Logan leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze fixed on her resume. "You don't have much corporate experience," he said plainly, his tone unreadable. "And leaving your previous jobs?" Autumn's throat tightened. She could almost hear Brenda's mocking laugh outside. But she took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I left because my daughter needed me. I couldn't take late shifts without anyone to care for her. But I've never walked away from responsibility. I work hard, I learn fast, and I don't give up, no matter how many times life tries to break me." Her voice grew stronger with each word, surprising even herself. For the first time, Logan's expression shifted. His brows softened, his eyes no longer cold, but curious, as if her quiet determination stirred something inside him. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint scratching sound of Ellie's crayon on paper outside the glass wall. Logan's gaze flicked toward the little girl who sat cross-legged, drawing with her head bent low. Finally, he spoke. "I can't promise you a permanent position." His words made Autumn's heart sink. But then he added, "What I can offer is a trial period. Prove yourself. Show me you're more than your circumstances, and the job is yours." Relief hit her like a tidal wave. Her eyes stung with unshed tears, but she managed to nod, whispering, "Thank you. You won't regret this." Logan stood, extending his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "I don't offer second chances lightly, Miss Hayes. Don't waste it." As Autumn walked out of the office, Ellie ran up, her small face glowing with hope. "Did we get it, Mommy?" she whispered. Autumn knelt down, hugging her tightly, tears finally spilling over. "We got a chance, sweetheart. That's all we need." And in that moment, she didn't just feel like a desperate mother. She felt like a fighter who had just stepped onto her battlefield with a silent vow in her heart. She would not fail. Days turned into weeks, and Autumn threw herself into the trial position like her life depended on it, because it did. She arrived early, stayed late, and never complained, even when the workload was heavy. She learned quickly, asked questions, and carried herself with quiet determination that didn't demand attention, but earned it nonetheless. Logan, from his glass office above the floor, noticed. He saw the way she treated people, not just her superiors, but everyone. She listened to the janitor's stories, thanked the delivery staff, and once, when a young intern dropped an entire stack of files, Autumn was the only one who knelt down to help. She didn't hesitate, didn't look around to see who was watching, she simply helped. Logan found himself lingering longer by the windows, his sharp eyes following her as if searching for something he couldn't name. There was no arrogance in her, no sense of entitlement, only resilience, and it intrigued him. One evening, long after most employees had left, Logan passed through the break room and paused. Autumn sat at the corner table, Ellie beside her, quietly coloring in her sketchbook. Autumn was hunched over a stack of training manuals, her hair falling loose around her tired face. A single cup of black coffee sat untouched at her side. Ellie looked up and smiled shyly when she noticed him. "Hi," she whispered, her voice soft, almost musical. Logan's stern exterior softened for the briefest second. "Hi," he replied, his deep voice gentler than Autumn had ever heard it. He glanced at the child's drawing. "What are you working on?" Ellie held up her page proudly, a stick figure version of her mother standing tall, with the words, "My hero," scribbled above. Logan's chest tightened unexpectedly, an ache he hadn't felt in years stirring inside him. Autumn quickly reached for the page, embarrassed. "Ellie!" But Logan raised a hand lightly. "It's a good drawing," he said. His eyes lingered on Autumn, something unspoken in them. Then, without another word, he left the room, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Autumn exhaled shakily, pressing her hand to her chest. She didn't understand why her boss unsettled her so much, or why his approval meant more than it should. And Logan, walking back to his office, told himself he didn't care, that he wasn't watching, that he wasn't feeling something he had long buried. But deep down, he already knew. This woman, with her quiet strength, was breaking through walls he thought were indestructible. It was a rare Saturday afternoon when the city finally exhaled, sunlight pouring through the trees, children's laughter floating across the park. Autumn sat on a weathered bench, watching Ellie chase butterflies with carefree joy, her little shoes kicking up the grass. For a moment, Autumn allowed herself to breathe, to feel the warmth on her skin, to forget the endless weight of survival. "Mommy, look!" Ellie's voice rang out as she ran back, holding a daisy she had plucked from the ground. She pressed it into her mother's hand. "Flowers don't cost anything. That's why they're the best gift." Autumn's throat tightened. She stroked her hair and whispered, "You're right, sweetheart. The best things in life aren't bought. They're given with love."
Unbeknownst to her, someone else had been listening. Logan stood a short distance away, having crossed the park after a morning jog. Dressed in casual running clothes, his usual sharpness replaced with something unguarded, he paused when he saw them. It wasn't the polished single mother in a corporate setting. It was Autumn in her element, soft, tender, a woman who loved deeply despite the odds. He should have walked past, but his feet carried him forward. "Hayes," his deep voice startled her. Autumn looked up, eyes widening. "Mr. Westwood." Ellie's face lit up with innocent delight. "Hi, mister," she chirped, waving. She didn't know titles or hierarchies. She just saw the man who had once defended her mother. Logan gave a small nod. "Afternoon. I was just passing through." He hesitated, then sat on the bench beside them, the distance polite, but close enough that Autumn's pulse quickened. For a few moments, silence stretched, filled only by Ellie humming to herself as she weaved tiny daisy chains. Logan watched her, his eyes softening in a way Autumn had never seen. "She's bright," he said finally, his tone quieter, almost reverent. Autumn smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on her daughter. "She's my reason for everything." Logan studied her profile, the sunlight catching strands of her hair, the way her tired eyes still glowed when she looked at Ellie. Something tugged at him, an ache he'd buried under years of steel and stone. Ellie, oblivious to the weight in the air, suddenly climbed onto the bench between them, proudly holding her messy daisy crown. "Here," she said, plopping it onto Logan's head. Autumn gasped softly, mortified. "Ellie!" But to her surprise, Logan didn't flinch. A low chuckle escaped him, quiet but real, as his lips curved into something that looked startlingly like a smile. "Fits perfectly." Autumn's heart skipped. For the first time, she saw not just the CEO, but the man beneath, capable of warmth, laughter, and maybe even healing. And in that park, beneath the golden light of a setting sun, an invisible thread was pulled tighter between them, a thread neither of them could deny for much longer.
Autumn's days at Westwood Enterprises had begun to feel almost steady. She was working hard, Ellie was safe, and, for the first time in years, there was a fragile sense of hope. But hope has a way of attracting shadows. It started with whispers in the break room. Coworkers exchanging smirks when she walked in, voices dropping to hushed tones. She's only here because the CEO feels sorry for her. Single mom charm, it works every time. Laughter followed, cruel and sharp. Autumn kept her head down, her cheeks burning, but the words clung to her like thorns. She wanted to scream that she had earned this chance, that every late night and every sacrifice was proof. But she stayed silent, swallowing her pride for Ellie's sake. One afternoon, she was called into HR. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, cold and sterile. Across the desk sat Brenda, that same cruel smirk etched into her lips. In her hand was a single sheet of paper, a resignation letter. "This is for the best, Autumn," Brenda said smoothly, though her eyes gleamed with victory. "There have been concerns about your professionalism, about the nature of your relationship with Mr. Westwood." Autumn's stomach dropped. "That's not true," she whispered, her voice shaking. Brenda leaned forward, her tone sharp. "It doesn't matter what's true. Perception is everything. Sign the paper, walk away quietly, and spare yourself the embarrassment." Autumn's hands trembled as she stared at the paper. Her chest ached with humiliation, her throat thick with unshed tears. After everything, after fighting so hard, was it all about to crumble? The door opened. Logan stepped inside. His presence filled the room instantly, his expression unreadable, but his eyes storm dark.
He looked at the resignation letter on the desk, then at Brenda, then finally at Autumn, whose eyes shone with restrained tears. Who authorized this? His voice was low, controlled but dangerous. Brenda faltered. I thought it was in the company's best interest. You thought wrong, Logan cut in, his words like a blade. He picked up the letter, tore it cleanly in half, and dropped it back on the desk. Ms. Hayes has done nothing but prove her value here. If anyone has a problem with that, they can come to me directly. The room went silent, the air thick with tension. Logan turned to Autumn then, his gaze steady, almost protective. You don't have to defend yourself against lies. Not here. Not while I'm watching. Autumn's breath caught. For a moment, the world around them blurred. The buzzing lights, Brenda's scowl, the cruel whispers outside. All she saw was him, standing like a shield between her and the storm. And in that moment, she realized Logan Westwood wasn't just giving her a job. He was giving her something she hadn't felt in years. Safety. The city stretched out beneath them, glittering with 1,000 lights against the night sky. Autumn hugged her arms around herself, the rooftop wind tugging at her hair. She had come up here to breathe, to escape the suffocating humiliation of the HR confrontation still echoing in her chest. But she wasn't alone. Logan stood a few feet away, his tall frame outlined against the skyline, hands buried in his pockets. His usual sharpness was softened by the glow of the city. For once, he didn't look like the untouchable CEO. He looked human. You shouldn't have had to go through that, he said quietly, his voice carrying easily in the open air. Autumn swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. I'm used to it. People have been judging me since the day Ellie was born. She looked down, her words trembling. Sometimes I wonder if the world will ever see me as more than a mistake trying to survive. Logan turned then, his gaze sharp, cutting through her despair. You are not a mistake. The words came out fierce, almost too raw. Autumn blinked, startled. Why do you care? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with a heavy breath, he walked closer, his jaw tight. Because I know what it's like to be defined by something you didn't choose, to carry scars no one else can see. He hesitated, his eyes flickering with something he rarely let out. Years ago, there was a fire. My little sister was trapped. I tried to get her out, but I didn't make it in time. His voice broke for the briefest second, a crack in the armor. And then, from that day forward, no amount of money, no empire, no success could silence the truth in my head that I failed her. Autumn's breath caught. The guarded, untouchable man before her suddenly looked shattered, the weight of his grief laid bare in the night air. I don't let people close, Logan admitted, his voice low, almost vulnerable. But then you walked in, fighting, not for yourself, but for your daughter, refusing to break. And for the first time in years, I saw something worth believing in. Autumn's eyes burned with tears, not just for her own pain, but for his. She stepped closer, their distance shrinking, the city roaring quietly below them. You didn't fail her, Logan. You loved her, and that love is still here. It's in the way you protect people, even when you don't realize it. For a long, charged moment, their eyes held, the air between them thick with something fragile yet undeniable, grief, hope, and a thread of connection neither had asked for, but both desperately needed. And on that rooftop, beneath the blanket of stars, Autumn realized she wasn't just seeing her boss anymore. She was seeing a broken man who, like her, was still searching for a way to heal.
The storm rolled in without warning. Thunder cracked across the sky, rain pounding against the motel windows where Autumn and Ellie had been staying since her trial job began. The roof leaked, the lights flickered, and Ellie clung to her mother, her little body trembling with every crash of thunder. Autumn tried to stay calm, holding her daughter close. "It's just a storm, sweetheart. We'll be fine." But her own heart raced. The door rattled with the force of the wind, water seeping under the frame. She had never felt so small, so fragile against the world's chaos. Then, 3 firm knocks. Autumn froze, tightening her grip on Ellie. Slowly, she opened the door. And there he was. Logan. Standing in the downpour, his hair plastered to his forehead, his suit soaked through, but his eyes steady and fierce. "You can't stay here," he said, his voice low but commanding over the roar of the storm. "Pack your things. You're coming with me." Autumn's breath caught. "Logan!" "No arguments," he cut in, his tone brooking no refusal. Then softer, his gaze flicked to Ellie, who peeked out from behind her mother. "It's not safe for her." Minutes later, Autumn found herself in the warmth of Logan's penthouse. The contrast was overwhelming, the glass walls glowing with the city lights, the storm raging outside, but silenced within these walls. Ellie's small hands clutched Autumn's as they stepped inside, wide-eyed at the expanse of polished floors and towering windows. Logan handed Ellie a soft blanket from the couch. "Here," he said gently. His deep voice, usually sharp and commanding, was quiet now, careful, as though he was afraid to frighten her. Ellie accepted it with a shy smile, curling up against her mother's side. Autumn looked around, her chest tight. "We can't stay here. It's too much, too—" Logan met her gaze, his eyes steady. "You don't have to do everything alone, Autumn." The words struck her harder than the storm outside. For years, she had survived by carrying the weight herself, never relying on anyone. But tonight, in this man's home, she felt something she hadn't in so long. Safe. As the thunder rumbled distantly, Logan sat across from them, his gaze drawn to the fragile picture they made. A mother, clutching her daughter, both wrapped in a blanket too big for their small frame. His chest ached with something unfamiliar, something he couldn't name. And as the storm raged on, so did the quiet storm between them, an unspoken truth growing louder in the silence. This was no longer just about a job. It was about trust, about healing, about a fragile family beginning to take root in the most unexpected place.
The seasons turned, and with them, so did Autumn's life. The woman who once walked nervously into Westwood Enterprises, clutching her daughter's hand, was gone. In her place stood a leader, confident, steady, respected. Inside the bustling office, people no longer whispered about her. They listened to her. Autumn Hayes, now director of training, commanded the room not with fear, but with grace. She built programs that gave second chances to others who had been overlooked. Single parents, young people with patchy resumes, those carrying scars invisible to most. She named the program New Roots. And at its launch event, with cameras flashing and applause echoing, Logan stood quietly at the edge of the stage. He didn't steal the spotlight, didn't claim the vision as his own. Instead, his eyes lingered on Autumn, the fire in her voice, the pride in her stance, the way Ellie clapped the loudest from the front row. Afterwards, as the crowd dispersed, Logan approached. His presence still carried the weight of power, but tonight There was something softer in his gaze. "You build this," he said simply. "You turned your chance into something bigger than yourself. You should be proud." Autumn smiled, a glow of quiet triumph lighting her face. "I am. But I couldn't have done it without someone who believed in me before I even believed in myself." For a heartbeat, their eyes held, the noise of the world fading until it was just them. Logan's chest tightened with the unspoken truth that had been growing for months. He had watched her fight, fall, rise again, and in the process, she had broken through walls he thought would stand forever. Ellie came bounding over then, her small hand slipping easily into Logan's. "Did you see me clap the loudest?" she asked, beaming. Logan chuckled, a sound so rare it made Autumn's heart skip. "I think the whole city heard you, kid." Autumn watched them, her daughter laughing freely with the man who had once been a stranger, and felt something deep within her shift. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. And somewhere between boardrooms and bedtime stories, between storms and rooftop confessions, a quiet truth had taken root. They were no longer just three lives colliding by chance. They were becoming a family. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon, the kind that painted the city in soft gray and made the world feel smaller, warmer. Autumn had been curled on the couch with a mug of tea, watching Ellie build a castle out of mismatched blocks. Logan, who had stopped by with groceries, claiming Autumn worked too hard to cook, was kneeling beside Ellie, helping her steady the top of the tower. Their laughter filled the apartment, light and unforced. For once, there were no boardrooms, no deadlines, no weight of the past pressing down, just the sound of rain against the windows and a little girl's giggles echoing like music. Ellie clapped her hands as the tower reached her chin. Then, without hesitation, she looked at Logan with a smile so bright it cut through the dim light of the storm. "Daddy, can you pass me the red block?" she asked, her voice innocent, casual, like the word had belonged to him all along. The room froze. The tower wobbled, but Logan didn't move. His throat tightened, his eyes searching Autumn's face. Autumn's breath caught. For a second, fear flickered through her, the fear of too much, too soon, of hearts breaking if this fragile bond shattered. But when she looked at Logan, she didn't see fear. She saw something else, something raw, something undone. Slowly, Logan reached for the red block. His hand trembled as he placed it gently in Ellie's palm. His voice, when it finally came, was softer than Autumn had ever heard. "Here you go, sweetheart," he said. Ellie didn't notice the way his voice cracked. She just smiled and went back to her tower, content. But Autumn, she saw it all. The way Logan's eyes glistened, the way his guarded walls fell in that single word, and something long buried in him, something tender and aching, finally broke free. Later, when Ellie had dozed off with her castle unfinished, Autumn and Logan stood in the quiet living room, the weight of the moment pressing between them. "She called you," Autumn whispered, unable to finish. Logan nodded, staring at the sleeping child. His voice was hoarse, like it had come from the deepest part of him. "I've never been called that before." Autumn's heart ached at the vulnerability in his words. She stepped closer, her voice trembling with truth. "Then maybe it's time you let yourself be." For the first time in years, Logan Westwood, the man the world saw as unshakable, closed his eyes and allowed himself to feel. And in that storm-lit apartment, with Ellie's soft breathing between them, a new kind of love was born. Quiet, fragile, but undeniable. The sea stretched endless and blue, the horizon kissed by the golden light of sunset. A soft breeze carried the scent of salt and wildflowers, and the sound of waves became the music for their vows. Autumn stood barefoot in the sand, her simple white dress flowing like it had been made for this very moment. Ellie clutched a basket of petals, scattering them with delight, her laughter dancing over the shore. Logan waited at the altar, a driftwood arch wrapped in white roses and ribbons, his usual sharp armor gone. Today, there was only the man who had been remade by love, who had found a home where he least expected. His eyes never left Autumn, not even for a second, as if the whole world had narrowed to her. When she reached him, barefoot and glowing, her hand slipped into his with the ease of something inevitable. Logan's voice was steady, but his eyes shimmered as he spoke. "I spent years building walls so high I thought no one could ever climb them. But you didn't just climb, you tore them down. And you gave me something I never knew I needed. A home, a family." Autumn's tears sparkled as she answered, her words breaking like waves against the shore. "You weren't just my second chance, Logan. You were Ellie's. And ours. You showed us what love can look like when it's safe, when it's steady, when it's forever." Ellie tugged at Autumn's dress then, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Can I say it now?" The guests chuckled as she turned to Logan, her voice ringing clear. "Daddy, don't forget to kiss Mommy." Laughter rippled through the crowd, but Logan didn't laugh. He simply lifted Autumn into his arms and kissed her beneath the fading sun, sealing not just a marriage, but the promise of a family born out of struggle, resilience, and love. As waves crashed and cheers rose, Ellie clapped her hands, declaring with childlike certainty, "This is our happily ever after." And for once, even Logan Westwood believed in forever.
If this story of love, redemption, and second chances touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Because true victories are not found in power or wealth, they're found in the quiet moments when love finally finds its way home.